So one of my most viewed episodes on YouTube was back in 2022 when I showed you a breakdown of a real job that I worked on. This is a TV commercial that I did, and I went node by node and showed you exactly how I graded it. Now, what I thought would be interesting in this episode is to revisit that same commercial 3 years later and just see if my techniques are the same, if I'd use the same tools. Obviously, Resolve has evolved since then. There are many new tools in there. I'm going to show you some 20 features as well in this episode, so stick with it to the end. And what I've done as well, I've just made it sort of beginner friendly as well, because I often work in groups. So I've taken everything out of the groups and just put it down at clip level so you can see exactly what I've done in the correct order. So let's first take a look at the original job that I did in 2022 and see what techniques I used. And I'll put a link to the original episode in the description so you can watch it back if you want to. So this is the job, the brief for this. It was a Christmas commercial. It was for a major brand. It had to look polished. It had to look warm and cozy and Christmassy. And well, that was the brief. So let's see what we can do in 2025. So I'm not going to cover this one in too much detail because every single node is covered in that original episode, but let's just have a look at some of the takeaways. Regular color management in here. So I've got my DaVinci RGB, DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, and Rec. 79 Gamma 2.4 matching my calibrated monitor. That was the delivery spec expected. If you don't understand color space transforms and color management, I've got a link to some beginner's guides to that in the description as well, so check that out. The other thing going on here, there's a lot of power window work going on here. So this grade was really transformed here in the power window stage. So a lot of shaping going on, and I'm going to do that again in 2025. Now, the film emulation I'm using on the original episode was the KODAK LUT that comes with DaVinci Resolve itself. This is a free LUT emulating KODAK 2383. There's a Fuji one in there as well. I'll put a link to an episode on how to use those in the description as well. This is what I used on the original one. Now, these days I'm using Dehancer, so I'm going to do it exactly how I would do it in 2025, but I'm always going to show you alternative ways of working. You're not going to have to buy plugins to grade how I grade. I'm just going to show you what I would actually do. And this episode is not sponsored by anyone. However, there are links in the description to discount codes for Dehancer, Mononodes, and some of the other things that I'm going to use in this episode. So let's open up a new one and start building this from fresh in 2025 and see if we can get that grade looking any better. So here we go. This is a brand new version. I've got nothing applied here at all except my free fixed node tree. This is a free download if you subscribe to my email newsletter. Again, the link's in the description. This is going to be quite a big description on this episode. But if you click on there, you'll get this node tree. Let's start building this up from scratch. This is fixed node tree. Nothing is populated in here at all apart from the color management here. So I've got CST up here. So I need to tell DaVinci Resolve what the camera source was, what the color space we were working in is from. So if I go to my effects, input color space, this is from an ARRI. So it's ARRI Wide Gamut 3. And the input gamma here needs to be ARRI log C3. I know that because that's been told to me by production. Now, the reason this looks okay is because this node is already populated. So this one comes populated as standard in my fixed node tree. And that's taken us from DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, down to Rec. 79 Gamma 2.4. So I can look at it on my grading monitor. My grading monitor is Gamma 2.4. If I didn't have this set, my image would look like this because it's in DaVinci Wide Gamut space. So all the grade that I'm going to do here is in a large color space, which is DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. All right, switching this on means I can grade before this node, underneath this node, before it, and see everything in Rec. 79. I can't view in DaVinci Wide Gamut. There's no such thing. All right, let's have a look what else is going on here. I've got balance, exposure, contrast, saturation. These are just pre-labeled nodes. They've got nothing in them at all. These are all completely blank. So if I switch it on and off, nothing happens, okay? These are just guides. So I've got 3 serial nodes at the beginning just to build my basic look. Then we branch off here. I've got a whole episode on how to use my basic node tree. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. Why not? And I've got a space here for power windows. So previously I put my power windows quite early. I'm going to actually put them in this row here. Okay, this row of parallels. And I've got one here called spare. Now what I'm going to do on here is I'm not going to use the KODAK LUT. So if you want to enable this, you just literally switch it on here. And then you can dial that back up and down as you, depending how much of that effect you want. But I'm actually going to delete that. I'm going to get rid of it completely. And on my spare node here, what I'm going to do is add Dehancer to give me my film print emulation. So I'm going to go to my effects here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and add Dehancer. Now you can use Film Look Creator, you can use that KODAK LUTS, you don't have to use Dehancer, but this is what I've been using for a few years now. So I'm going to drag and drop it on. And by default, you get this sort of crazy look here. So I'm just going to disable all the tools that are in there. I'm going to switch it to high quality, and I'm just going to add in a film print emulation here. And I'm going to put KODAK 2383 print film. Now I'm in, if we look where we are in the node tree, I'm sitting before this NCST, which means I'm in DaVinci wide gamut color space. So what I need to do in here is just check that Dehancer is set to DaVinci wide gamut. Oh, I need to actually enable it as well. There we go. Right, so that's now on. So we've got a bit of contrast in here. What the film emulation is doing, the KODAK one or Film Look Creator or the Dehancer one, is adding a bit of filmic contrast in there. It's giving us a bit of coolness in the shadows, a bit of warmth in the highlights. These are really good places to start. But what you often need to do is look at your basic exposure as well. So you kind of need to play with the two before you start doing all the fine tuning of your grade. Now the issue I've got here is I'm trying to assess the image on my scopes, and I'm getting really tainted view here because of this huge light source. So straight away, I'm just going to knock that light source back a little bit. So I've got here Dehancer. Let's rename that, in fact, Dehancer. What I'm going to do is take my first power window in my fixed node tree, and I'm just going to put a window around here. Now what I need to do, by knocking this light source back, just temporarily even, means I can balance my image a little bit better. My scopes won't be so tainted. And I'm just going to draw a really nice loose shape around that light source. I'm going to give it plenty of softness, as I always do. And then what I'm going to do is go to my primary tools here, and I'm going to pull the highlights down. In fact, I'm going to pull them right down. We can always go back in and change these later. So let's bring down a little bit of gamma. I'm going to do this, I would normally do this using the panel, but I'm going to do it on the actual interface itself. Something like that, and even maybe a little bit of gain there as well. So I'm going to switch that on and off there. So we've really taken that light source down. So now my waveform is a little bit more true. So what we can do now is start work at the front. Okay, so really what we want to be doing is looking at our very first node here, at our balance and exposure. Let's get that right, but we're working that with Dehancer on, because that's giving us a bit of contrast as well. So the two work side by side. Now, just before I start playing with balance and exposure on there, what I want to do is go back to Dehancer and just knock it back a bit, because it's giving me a very strong effect at the minute. That image has really come down. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to click down the bottom here, go to my output here, and you can actually reduce the amount of that film print emulation that's coming in. So I'm going to knock it back to about, I don't know, 55, something like that. And that's a little bit better starting point now. So what I'm aiming to do on this node is to get really good skin tone. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a tool here that's going to help me do that. If I go to timeline, basically this allows me to put a tool that I can see on any clip going. So I'm going to install a DCTL here that's going to help me to check skin tones. This is a really cool tool. So DCTLs allow third-party developers to access the tools within DaVinci Resolve but make their own tools. So this is a really smart one. So the DCTLs just installed like LUTS, and then these are all the ones that I've bought over the years. And I've got one here called Balance. Now this is from Mononodes. I've got a discount code to Mononodes in the description as well. I use Mononodes quite a lot now, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. You could do this using the vector scope, by the way. There's a skin tone line on here. But what this tool does, in fact what I do now, is I split that vertically. It's got some new tools in here. And we can just line it up a little bit better here. I've got an episode on how to use this actually, but it's an older version, so I don't think it had the split. But I'll put a link to that in the description as well. So if I leave that on, what it's showing me is the yellow here is saying you're on the skin tone indicator. Now remember, that is not the law. You don't have to be set on the skin tone indicator, but you need to be consistently on it, under it, or over it. So we can tell here that we're slightly towards green here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my clip level. I'm going to leave that on. And in my balance exposure node here, what I'm going to do is just adjust my offset. And that's quite hard to do it with the little ball on here. Normally I'm using my panel. So I'm just going to come down here and I can adjust things down here as well. I'm just keeping an eye on that skin tone indicator, but I'm obviously looking at what it actually looks like as well on here. So you could be using, if I take that off and go back here, you can see that the skin tone is sitting exactly on that line, which is great. Switch that on and off, let's just check it's better. So what we need now is a bit more contrast in here. So I'm going to go to my contrast tool here. I'm going to click on the primaries here. I'm going to increase gain, something like that. Now I've still got to do the window shaping on here. This was an important part of this grade. But before I do that, I'm just going to go back to Dehancer before I move any further and just check I'm happy with the settings. So let's go in to Dehancer. Again, this could be Film Look Creator. It could be just that KODAK LUTS. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my print here, the film print. Okay, and I'm going to dial in just a little bit more contrast in here. I'm going to add a little bit of color density. So if I go extreme on that, you can see what's happening. So it just gives us a nice rich density in the colors. And my target white, it's a little bit cool. I'm looking here, I'm just going to bring that down so it's more like a D60, D55 lighting, something like that. Okay, so that's my filmic look set. Now the other thing I want to do is add a little bit of halation and bloom. Now I'm going to use Dehancer again. Now there's halation and bloom built into Film Look Creator. You can use those, but I'm just showing you exactly how I would do it in 2025, which means I'm using Dehancer. So I put this after the 709. I like to put my bloom and halation actually in Rec 709. So I'm going to add another serial here. I'm going to bring it down here, or else I won't be able to access it. So I'm going to press my effects. You see what I mean? It would have covered it. I'm going to go down to Dehancer. I'm going to take, there is a later version than this actually. I'm going to stay now in 709. I'm going to go to the bottom, disable all tools, put it on the highest quality, and I'm going to go up here and find bloom, and I'm going to custom amount of impact here. I don't want too much going on, but I just want a nice little bit of bloom. This gives it a nice little glow. I think it gives it a nice sort of Christmassy feel as well. And a bit of halation. Again, really, really subtle with the halation here. So if you look what's going on, if we're not careful, that's the halation there. Okay, so that's obviously crazy amounts. We want it hardly noticeable at all. Okay, and what I quite like with halation is it kind of gives you a little bit of a glow in the skin. So you can see what it's doing there. So it's giving our subject a really nice skin tone there. So what I want to look at now is our saturation element. We've got our balance, we've got our contrast going, and this is pretty heavily saturated actually, so we don't need too much going on. But what I want to do is add a little bit more density, particularly in the reds. That's going to give us that really nice Christmas feel. So to do that, we could use the color slice. So in the color slice, when we increase saturation, you're actually increasing it with density. So you don't increase the amount of luminance when you're increasing saturation. It gives you a nice dense look. And let's have a look at his scarf here as well. I want to make that, I'm going extreme here, but I want to make it more like that. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of density in there. And I just want to show you something here, and I'm going to show you why I don't use color slice at the moment. So on here, what's happening here on his ear and his skin is it's picking up the density and it's leaking into the skin. Now what you can do is take your skin zone here and refine it. Okay, but I still find that you get a little bit of artifacts going on here. So if I took that on and off, okay, it looks great actually, it looks really good, but there's a tool that I use that gives you better results than that. So just before I show you an alternative to the color slice tool, think about subscribing if you haven't done so already. I spend a long time preparing these episodes and making them. It is appreciated. Hit the thumbs up and hit the notification bell. Now I'm trying to get saturation with a bit of density, so the regular saturation tools are not going to give me that. The color slice will give me that, but the tool that I'm going to use is another DCTL, and it's from the same website. It's from mononodes.com. And I'm going to drag and drop that on, and I'm going to use this DCTL for my saturation, and it's part of the color shift range. And if I click on this one, this is the new version 4 one, and what it gives me is the ability to do saturation in each of the 6 vectors. So you've got blue, magenta, cyan, green, yellow, red, and I can control density, I can control saturation and the range in there. Now watch the difference here. If I go to global saturation and just increase it in, let me go quite extreme, but you don't get that artifacting on the skin. Now what you can also do on here is actually take skin out of the equation a lot easier. If I press highlight on here, you'll see what's included. Obviously I'm going extreme here with this saturation, so let's dial it back to something more usable. I mean, I hardly want any in at all. We've got a very saturated image going on here. But if I press anything that says deep, so deep sat and deep density, that will exclude skin tone from the equation. And what else I'm going to do is I'm going to add some density to that scarf. Not as much as that. I'm going to take my deep density out so it's not affecting skin tones as much. And let's have a look at what that's doing. I'll switch that on and off. Okay, that's looking great. Now I might just take a bit more saturation out. We're getting very close here in there. So let's just take a little bit of the saturation out of that. Something like that. Maybe a little bit more density even. Now, while I was zoomed in there, I did actually notice there's quite a bit of noise in here. So we can address that with noise reduction. So I put my noise reduction generally after the first CST. I'm going to add another serial in there. Let's click on our noise reduction tool here and go to this new mode, ultra noise reduction, and press analyze. And it's going to do all the hard work for me. So on and off. Let's go to our next node up here that we haven't looked at is temperature. I tend to use the HDR tools for temperature in here. You get much more accurate results. And let's just see if it even needs any. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. The brief was to make it warm and cozy and Christmassy with a super high polish, and this is looking really good. All right, so something like that. Now I need to do this main window work. You remember on the original one, we had a lot of windows that really shaped this image, especially with this super strong source coming in here. So I want to get my subject popping out a lot more than the background. So I'm going to go onto my power windows here. I'm going to take this one here. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. So I've got a bit of working area outside of the full screen image. And I'm just going to draw a shape around our subject. Again, nice and loose. No tight windows in here. Move that over. Let's add some outside and inside softness as always. And I just want to pop our subject out a little bit. I'm going to use HDR. I'm just going to use exposure here. Just lift it up a little bit, not a lot, because I don't want this to become obvious what's going on. Something like that. Now we could use the magic mask to highlight our subject. Let's have a look at that. This is the version 19 magic mask. Now what I am going to do in this episode is I'm going to take this into version 20 and do some of the newer features in there. I'm going to do that nearer the end, but this machine is running my main programs that are for broadcast. They're not all signed off yet, so I can't update to version 20 just yet, but I will be doing so soon. But let's just see what the version 19 magic mask gives us. I'm going to go to person mode here and better and just draw around, and let's have a look how good we actually get this. So it's not bad at all, actually. In fact, it's better than I thought it was going to be. I've used the magic mask in version 19 before, and I have been tripped up on a few occasions. And yeah, it's missing a bit of his finger here, so we can just drop that in there. But unless that's perfect, it's gone a bit over his jumper there as well. And we've not even seen it on the move yet. So unless that was perfectly accurate, it's going to look a bit weird. So I'd rather use power windows in this instance. So I'm going to reset that. And go back to this power window where I was working. Oh, I need to take that highlight off. And so I've just lifted that up a little bit in the exposure. And what I'm going to do is to get the background going, I'm going to take the alpha output of this node and feed it to the alpha of the next node. And I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to use my key node here, invert. And now what I can do is anything I do on here is the inverse. So let's go to our primaries here. I'm just going to bring down my gamma a little bit. Again, I don't want to do too much here. You know, a little goes a long way in these sort of things. A little bit of gain maybe. Just a touch. Let's have a look at that. So now what we've done is brought the lamp down as well, because that's included in our selection. So let's have a look at what these two are doing. So that's off and on. So it's really helping our subject to pop. So now what I could do is go to this power window here, where we had the light source, and just check that I'm happy with that. Remember, we only brought that down at the beginning because it was really affecting what was happening on our scopes. I'm just being careful we're not getting too hot on our saturation here. Let's have a quick spot check of our skin tone as well. We've done quite a bit here. Let's just check we're not going too off here. That's looking really good. You've also got here an exposure heat map, so we can actually have a look at the exposure of the skin tone on here. So anything red means it's a little bit hot. We can see that quite clearly here. Anyway, I don't mind that. So all that's left to do now is send this to my laptop, which is running version 20 of Resolve. I just want to see if there's anything in there that I would use in 2025. But first, let's have a quick look how this compares. So this is what I've just done today. And there's the original video. So it's quite a difference, actually. I think, well, it's for you to decide whether it looks better or not. I think it does look better. This looks a little bit green. This looks better. I think it just looks smoother. I think the density in here is much nicer in the scarf. There's much more separation between him and the background. So personally, I like it. Maybe a little bit too much bloom going on here. I'm going to just knock that back. Let's get that right. I can here. Let's put the bloom back to where it was. Yeah, it's way too strong. Let's bring that back. So I'm going to export this out now to my laptop and let's open it up in DaVinci Resolve version 20. I'm just looking at the lamp. It's still looking a little bit hot to me. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to bring my gamma down a little bit more on that. Just checking I can't see any of the window shapes, but that's looking good. Now, one thing I wanted to check in here was with these two power windows that we got. So I'm going to switch them off. I'm going to create a new parallel. And what I want to do is see how good the Magic Mask 2 works. So I'm going to click on the Magic Mask icon here. And what we've got now is the AI Magic Mask 2. So I'm going to select some points on here. And I just want to see how accurate it is, because in my previous tests of this, it is good. So it's brought the fingers in really well. It's a really good, solid, clean line around him now. That is great. So what I'm going to do, that's accurate straight away. So what I'm going to do is track that through. So in version 19, the Magic Mask has tripped me up a few times, so I'm very cautious about using it. But with version 20, I'm really keen to see if I can keep getting this sort of quality from it. So I'm going to switch off the highlights, and I'm going to go back to what I originally did, which was adding a little bit of exposure in here. Just going to pop our subjects a little bit, not too much. And then what I want to do is address the background. So I'm going to do another parallel in here. So it's Option P. I'm going to feed the mask into here, and then I'm going to invert it. And then I'm going to go back to my primary tools here, and I'm just going to bring our gamma down a little bit. And maybe a bit again. And let's have a look at these two on and off. So that looks great. Now I want to see if there's another tool in here that's going to help me, and that is the new CHROMA warp. So I've got a node here called Warper. We might as well use that. You don't have to put Warper on here just because it says Warper, but let's go and have a look. So here's the CHROMA warp tool. And what I'm wondering is if I can get, we've got a flare kicking off his jumper here. I'm just wondering if I can change the whole look and color and hue of his jumper to help that a little bit. I can't really get rid of that. So let's just do a sample here. And I've done a whole episode on how to use the CHROMA warp as well. And just dialing that in something like that. It looks a little bit strange, but if I maybe use a bit less saturation in there, something like that might just work. So just for comparison, full screen, here is the original grade from 2022. Here is the grade in 2025 from version 19, and here's the grade that we did in version 20, adding the CHROMA warp and the AI Magic Mask. So just to finish this one off when I'm not recording this YouTube episode, I've taken the version 21, I've lifted the background a little bit, I've also reduced overall saturation just slightly, I've reduced the gamma in the lamp, this was making his hand quite hot, and I've also lifted his other arm and hand with another power window. So yes, there are lots of new tools in DaVinci Resolve since I graded this originally, but I think my core fundamentals are still pretty much the same. I think those power windows really made this grade. I am using Dehancer more, I'm using Mononodes, I didn't use DCTLs at all when I did this originally. I use them all the time, but I have shown you alternatives. You don't need to buy these products. I personally enjoy using them. I use them on every single job. Let me know in the comments if you like these sort of grade breakdowns, and even if you think I did improve it or not. And what else? Take a look at this video here that YouTube is recommending that you watch from my channel. Think about subscribing if you enjoy this sort of stuff. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.